Yes, Israel's Kulanu party, led by former Communication Minister Moshe Kahlon, is a newcomer to the political scene with a focus on social issues and is expected to become one of the biggest surprises of the elections. The latest polls show the party with around 10 seats, and it's gaining momentum by the minute or even by the day. My guest tonight, Michael Oren, is the former Israeli ambassador to the United States and a historian and author of 2 New York Times bestsellers. He's also ranked 3rd on the Kulanu Party's candidate list, and in over a week, we will know if he is also a candidate to become a minister. Good evening.
Lucy, great to be with you.
Great to have you here again. Mm-hmm. Which, if we're talking about that, maybe in the next few days, you will be a minister. What are the chances? I don't think anybody really knows. The elections are always full of surprises. I would certainly hope that would be the outcome, and I want to bring my years of expertise in Israel's foreign policy and diplomacy to bear in a position that deals with foreign policy. Oh, so foreign policy, like you said, and I believe that we have a lot of things to fix in the foreign ministry and the international arena and international diplomacy, because it seems that we're doing not so good outside.
Not terrifically. I agree with you. But I think the problems are a little deeper. Israeli society is a society which traditionally, for all sorts of reasons, has never taken foreign policy particularly seriously. There's a tremendous focus and emphasis on security here for obvious reasons. And foreign policy has always taken a second seat or a back seat to the security policy. It's sort of like a subfield of security. Raising public awareness of the fact that, hey, we're not alone in the world. Hey, we have to have good relations with our allies. We have to reach out to other developing societies. Is an uphill struggle, but it's the one that I've taken on myself, and I hope to bring us to a better place. I know I can bring us to a better place on issues like the Palestinian issue.
From where do you start to fix the relationship that Israel has with the world? Because after Operation Protective Edge, it seems that it only deteriorated even more. It seems that the advocacy that maybe to try and explain Israel and to explain the policy, it seems like it's almost impossible because people just stopped listening.
So I think we have to start doing and not just talking. I think during the war, my friends from the United States, American officials would call me and say, okay, we understand you have to defend yourself against Hamas, but where's your end game? Where are you going on the diplomatic level? And nobody ever gave a good answer. It's time we have to give an answer. We have to tell the world, and particularly our friends in the United States, where we're headed. Now, right now, I don't believe that there's a Palestinian partner who's willing to talk to us. I don't think that Abu Mazen's going to talk to us. He's busy in the UN declaring a state there and not giving us peace. He's busy in the Hague accusing us of war crimes last summer. He's not going to sit down and give up some very painful concessions, which being giving up the Palestinian claim to Jaffa or to Haifa or the return of Palestinian refugees. It's not going to happen. There are some Israeli politicians who think we should annex part of the West Bank, which I think it would be ruinous for us. There are some Israeli politicians who think that the Saudis are going to give us peace. They're going to come out and have an international peace. None of these things are linked to reality in any real way. I think we have no choice, Lucy, but to take our destiny in our own hands and to take the steps that are necessary to improve the lives of Palestinians in the West Bank, to give them greater freedom of movement, greater access to natural resources, greater access to development and businesses. At the same time, we have to preserve ourselves. But all the time, we have to defend ourselves, but all the time we keep the door open to final status negotiations. Until those negotiations take place, where we build, because the settlement issue is a tough one. You were ready to get on the settlement issue.
Exactly what I wanted to ask you, because it's always falling on the same issue, on the settlement.
Indeed. So we have to make a tough decision, but it's got to be a decision. And the decision goes back to an understanding we had with the previous president, with George Bush back in 2004. He wrote a letter to Ariel Sharon, who was the prime minister. That letter was approved by both houses of Congress. And what did it say? It said, we realize that since 1967, almost a half century has gone by, and there have been changes in the area. There are large settlement blocks that include 85% of the settlers. It's less than 2% of the West Bank. There are large Jewish neighborhoods that have been built in former Jordanian Jerusalem. Yes. They're not going to change. There's hundreds of thousands of people there. Most of the Jews in Jerusalem live in these neighborhoods, by the way, more than half.
Yes.
So let's recognize that if Israel reaches a final status agreement with the Palestinians, there'll be some kind of arrangement, but these areas will remain within Israel. That took a lot of pressure off. We have to go back to that understanding. We've got to stop building in areas that could conceivably be part of a future Palestinian state in a final status agreement, and let the world know. When I go back to what I talked about, letting the world know our end game. Where are we going?
Because when you're talking about, Area A, Area C, Area B, for our viewers, it means like nothing. Because they don't understand actually on the ground what does it mean. And maybe even the Palestinians and the Israelis don't understand really what it doesn't mean. And you already mentioned the Americans and maybe the lack of understanding that the Americans have on what is actually going on the ground. We see it with their foreign policy. We see the way that they are acting in the Syrian case, in Iran, maybe with ISIS, maybe right now with Egypt. How bad is the situation between us and the United States? Is it that bad? Is it like really got to the point where we will have to deal with an American president for the next 2 years that doesn't want to cooperate with us?
Well, there's good news and there's bad news. All right, let's start with the bad news. Always good to get the bad news over. Okay, we have an administration, the Obama administration. I know it quite well. Worked extensively with it. It has an ideological worldview, and that world does not accord with the ideological worldview of certainly the previous Israeli government, the present prime minister. But I think any Israeli government, even a left-wing Israeli government, would have difficulty at some point with some aspects of that worldview. For example, go back to the settlements, and I hope I'm not getting into too much resolution here, granularity. The Obama administration doesn't recognize the Bush-Sharon letter, doesn't recognize that the Jewish neighborhoods of Jerusalem and the settlement bloc would be part of Israel in a final status negotiation, and will not sees no difference between building in those areas and building in the outskirts of Nablus for Israelis, for settlement building. So that would be a problem even for a party on the far left like Meretz. Meretz couldn't freeze by law all the building in these big neighborhoods of Jerusalem. So that would be a problem. So that would be the bad news. The good news is that the relationship between the United States and Israel is very, very wide. It's not just between two individuals or even between two governments. It's Congress, it's the American people. Polls are taken. A Gallup poll showed that support for Israel in the United States right now is at an all-time high. Even in spite of the war last summer, it went up. It went up because Americans sort of get it. They get that this place is a bastion of democracy and that it is, for all of its complexities, it's pro-American. And there are not many militarily strong, scientifically, technologically advanced, pro-American democracies running around the Middle East. So it's not that the Americans have a big lot of choice either. Okay. So, and we have no choice but for America. There's no substitute for America for Israel.
From your point of view, are they wrong with the Iranian issue? Are they not seeing something that we are seeing and we are facing each and every day?
I think that there are two aspects to the American position on Iran which are problematic for Israel. One is structural. Just pure structural. America, I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It's a big country. It's far away from the Middle East. The Iranians are not threatening to wipe America off the map. America has the biggest army and the biggest military capabilities in the world. Israel is a small country. We're in Iran's backyard. They're threatening to wipe us off the map. And we have a very good army, but it's not like the American army. It's not the same thing. So we have zero margin for error on the Iranian issue. So America can afford to take some gamble. But there's also an ideological difference.
So was he that wrong by going to the Congress?
Bibi?
Benjamin Netanyahu.
Benjamin Netanyahu?
Yeah.
I never call him Bibi.
Really?
The prime minister? I objected to his decision to go to Congress. I thought it would create friction between Israel and the United States, but also it's sort of interceding between the White House and Congress, between the Democrats and the Republicans. Israel also has a paramount national interest in maintaining what's called bipartisan support. That's both parties. Let's not get involved in this. And there's a terrible fight now brewing between the Congress and the president over Iran. Let's not get involved in it. I did not in any way cast doubt on his position on Iran. I think he's 100% right on Iran.
You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say that at least he had the chance to speak to Israelis in English. Michael Oren.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you very, very much.
Great.
But this I said, not you. Thank you very, very much.
Always. Thank you.
And thank you, our viewers, for being with us tonight. Tomorrow we will be here at the same time, same place from the Jeff Report Israel. Have a great night.